Well, it's not a platitude. I think what you have said just now in about 25 minutes has confirmed what I said just now, that it's difficult to talk about India-China relations because saying what has not been said before. In fact, you might summarize what you have said, that the dynamics have not changed. The power play is still there. And your contention was that even under Prime Minister Modi, India has not really defined its own direction in its policy, and in particular relation with China. What struck me was that you mentioned that during Xi Jinping's visit, he shows that China is prepared to cooperate with India, but on its own terms. And you refer to Chinese submarines operating in Sri Lanka waters as a deterrent factor. I don't know how much, I myself do not know about these Sri Lanka submarines around there, but I wonder if in the course of discussion you can elaborate more on these Chinese submarines operating in Sri Lanka factors, and then we open the questions.
I don't think we should read too much into this. What I mean by that is simply that for years, the Indian policy with Sri Lanka is that it's okay to have economic cooperation between China and Sri Lanka, like between every other nation, but no management of ports and no military bases, right? With the arrival of a submarine, the question is very much: are we heading towards will we have a Chinese submarine bases in Sri Lanka or something similar to that? And there have been two incidents. One took place early September, one in October, when there was port calls by submarines. So this is not something which go unnoticed. I don't think that, I don't want to exaggerate the military significance of that. What I want to emphasize is the political signaling that is being meant by this act. That's what I want to insist upon. Similarly, I don't think that because Xi Jinping stopped in the Maldives or in Sri Lanka, two countries with which China has an active cooperation, it means that it will never ever be a nuisance for India operating from there. But there is clearly a willingness to signal that, well, look, we also can create trouble for you on your periphery if you do behave the same way in our periphery as well. And it's interesting to see that his visit took place between Modi's visit to Japan and Modi's visit to the United States. So, I'm a political analyst and I try to analyze things politically, and I cannot refrain by seeing a significance in that. Again, I don't want to see too much into it. I don't think this is decisive. I'm just saying this is political signaling. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, the gentleman there first.
Coming back to that point.
On Sri Lanka?
No, the Xi Jinping's visit to India.
Okay, right.
At the same time,
can you introduce yourself?
my name is Omkar Shrestha. I'm with the MES and also Associate Research Fellow with the ICS.
Yes.
I don't know much, I was quite baffled. When Xi Jinping was embracing Modi, at the same time there was border skirmishes. And that's very confusing, I thought. What's the message that's being conveyed here? Now, I didn't realize that similar thing was going on in the water of Sri Lanka and Maldives. So when you put together, was it because Xi Jinping could not handle at home about his military element, or was it the deliberate signaling that, like you said? So I just raised this because it
May I take one more question, Surya? Are related or?
Not really.
Not related. Okay, that's this question first, and then Surya. Yeah.
Well, I'm not competent at all to engage a debate as to whether Xi Jinping is controlling his troops. I don't believe that it's a lack of control or anything. And all I want to say, and that's really the only thing I'm trying to say, is that there was political signaling there. That's it. So in other words, whether, and in many ways, whether he did control the thing or not is largely irrelevant. What it means is that India has some capacity, has some leverage over China has some leverage over India, and India's margin for maneuver is limited meaning that in every single aspect of his foreign policy, he will have to be cautious because of that sort of reaction. And that's an inhibiting factor for you. It's always been. And the sensitivity to that inhibition will be different depending who is in power, probably. Although Manmohan Singh was definitely not as shy as he had described to be sometimes. But I think that those elements are there. And I'm not engaging in debate as to who was right, who was wrong. This is not the point. The point is simply, there is only so much that India can do, and has to be careful in every other aspect of its foreign policy, especially in Asia.
Roger, the same point?
On same point, I just want to say that Chinese submarine visit to Sri Lanka was not exclusive made for Sri Lanka. It was passing by and it stayed there. There was no official alarm in India on that. In terms of naval capability, India is ahead and much better, far ahead than China in Indian Ocean region. For example, in terms of handling aircraft carrier, Chinese Navy, PLA Navy lost its 2 pilots because they are not well trained and equipped to handle or landing on aircraft carrier, which is India is superior in that. That was just one example. 2 quick question, which is that was covered.
Okay, raise it first.
One is in your remarks, you started with some negative remarks. For example, you said that India's lookist policy was to prevent conflict with China. I mean,
no,
not a stated objective, but
overall policy of China.
But one question, remark you mentioned about India's security dilemma and confrontational relations. India is making relations with Chinese neighbor, which is more in a confrontational sense and creating security dilemma in India's foreign policy. Can you elaborate more on that? One more point, when you say India as a net security provider in this region, country are not trusting that. What do you mean by net security provider? Is it in a sense fighting war on behalf of nations, or in what sense?
I'm lagging things with them. Okay.
Should I answer that?
Just short.
Okay, on your first point, I mean, again, I said don't exaggerate the military impact of that. I mean, the fact that he was on his way to somewhere else. I worked for the French Ministry of Defense. I know how those things work. And when you want to mean something to somebody, it will always be on the way to somewhere else because, plausible deniability is very much there. On the security, the second question was about the security dilemma. Again, I'm not signaling any intention. De facto, if you are Chinese and if you see a country like India, which so far you consider quite inoffensive, until the rapprochement of 2000 with the United States, India was not really seen as a problem. And I remember, and I think you were already there, in 2000 we see suddenly a flurry of Chinese officials arriving after Clinton visit and after the beginning of the rapprochement. And then that continues with the nuclear deal and so on. So the fear is that, well, there is an alliance there which is directed against us. So for China, even if from an Indian perspective this is seen as a defensive move, and I would certainly argue quite normal, natural one, this perception is there. So this is the nature of a security dilemma. Any move by one creates additional problem for the other, or at least the perception. So yes, there is a security dilemma which is being created. And the fact that an India closer to the United States is now also getting closer to a series of states on China's periphery. I'm not saying that the intention is negative, and I certainly don't mean that. But this is a matter of competing perception there. What was your last question?
Net security provider.
Net security provider.
Well, net security provider, well, this is really the question. I mean, definitely not conduct a war on behalf of anybody. I mean, look, again, the Japan relation is interesting. Have you read anything which commit any of the two countries in favor of the other? And I'm not, again, it's not a criticism because that would probably make no sense. But this is a fact. What is it that India is willing to support for Japan vis-à-vis China, or vice versa? So it doesn't mean that India cannot provide security in terms of, let's say, anti-piracy and a number of things like that. And it has started to be more active in those things, yes, but this is still very limited, and this is, again, in terms of security architecture, I believe it is a problem for the region because there is an improvement in the level of soft security which is collectively being provided in the region, but it doesn't go to a strategic level. So again, there is a dependency over the United States, while at the same time trying to preserve good relations on the other side, and that becomes extremely complicated. But yes, there are doubts as to what India can provide. This is not zero. There are doubts as to what extent it will be meaningful for each and every of its partners. That's what I'm saying.
Sorry?
What is your sense on Obama's likely visit to India in January? Is it just symbolic because of his participation in the Republic Day celebrations, or will it be more substantive? What is your sense? And also, what is that which has changed in China's relationship with Pakistan? Because you made a passing reference to that there is something of a change in China's attitude towards Pakistan. Is it in relation to India, or is it in relation to the so-called Islamic terrorism? What is that you have in mind?
It is both. It is both. It is definitely in relation to its own terrorism. I mean, you know, the Chinese, like everyone, have understood that the Pakistanis are not reliable. The Pakistanis are more reliable with China than with anybody else in the world. Because when they say something to any of us, they say something, they do something else. When they say something to the Chinese, they try. They don't want to succeed, but they try. But at the same time, the Chinese understand more or less what Pakistan is up to, the same way that everybody else does. Not so long ago, some Chinese admitted to me that we are basically free riding on the Western discourse of Pakistan that allow us to be in the good book, and in any way we are more or less the last friend, and at the same time, but we don't necessarily trust more than you guys do. And of course, they will ask for the support vis-à-vis the Uyghur, vis-à-vis a number of things like that. And there is also the need to develop relations with India, the need to prevent India to be too close to the US, the need to also access the Indian market and so on. So it's both ways. Now, there is an ambivalence again as to what the Chinese are ready to do. It's interesting to see, for example, after Mumbai, they sent a special envoy to both India and Pakistan. Right? Now they're willing to exert more responsibility in Afghanistan. We don't know what it's going to be like. They haven't told anybody yet, at least I haven't seen anything. But the fact is, to my surprise, the Indians do not seem to be particularly worried about that. And that's a sign of evolution. And not so long ago, China refused to speak to India about Afghanistan and simply send them back to the Pakistanis, talk to Islamabad about it. Now this is no longer the case. They speak directly with it. So there is a change of attitude. That's one thing. What was the other one? Obama, I don't know. I don't know, or I don't know yet. There is, of course, a high degree of symbolism. This is the guest of honor and so on. But the relation during the first visit, Modi's visit to, was probably a little better than expected substantially. What everybody expected was re-establish a relationship which, for all the reasons you know, had become chaotic and so on. It went a little further than that, although nothing was really made public. And Narendra Modi got what he wanted to anyway, sort of a blessing and legitimacy which came back to him after all those years of being a pariah and so on. Mobilization of the diaspora, which he did wonderfully. This, incidentally, is the only aspect which did interest the US press and so on. What's going to come out of the next visit, I don't know.
As to Obama, I heard an expression this morning describing Obama, symbolism, etc. describing him as dead man walking. See, that's so far as his clout goes. Anyway, I was going to ask you about the role of the Indian states. To what extent is that a constraint on the way Delhi wants to relate to the rest of the world? Modi began with the neighborhood, immediately ran into problems because the states have their own position vis-a-vis the neighborhood, and that's not going to sync with Delhi's. Would that eventually be a huge constraint on Delhi's looking beyond the neighborhood, east, west, or wherever? In other words, would the effect or influence of the relationship with the neighborhood, which is almost existential for India, have so much of an impact that it will erode India's capacity to relate to the rest of the world?
Well, one of the big projects of Narendra Modi is to involve the states much more in whatever he wants to do. He says the government is the PMO and the states. So definitely will involve them in and that may change the dynamic. What somebody like me would be slightly more skeptic of is if he does not institutionalize this move at some point, then it will last as long as Modi will last, or as long as even a successor will continue the same policy. But there is a willingness to take people along, take the states along. And I mean, look at the attitude vis-a-vis your country, vis-a-vis Bangladesh, for example, where Mamata did block just everything on the Tista waters and the enclaves. Well, apparently the enclaves will be signed on, the bill will be introduced in Parliament and will probably be ratified. The Congress tends to be slightly more responsible in the position than BJP tends to be. So I think we're moving the right direction there. Well, I don't know about the other example, which is Tamil Nadu, because Jayalalitha is no longer there, so it might change things a little more. But the willingness to change things is there. How deep will it be? Again, there is the question of institutionalization. You remember this slogan of Narendra Modi during the election. I mean, the state should be part of India's economic diplomacy, right? Well, right after the election, I was asking the question, what does that mean in practice? And I'm still waiting for the answer. Because again, you will have to find an institutional mechanism to have the state more involved. So perhaps it will simply be allow the state to do their economic promotion without necessarily asking Delhi's permission. That was the case so far. So, but I don't know yet, and I haven't seen anything concrete yet. So I think your question is totally legitimate. I think he has taken some steps which go in the right direction. How far we'll go, that I don't know.
Yes, that's Jim.
Yeah, my question is more or less similar to it because it was interesting that you emphasized the Modi's leadership in building closer, India-China relations. And regarding this point, well, are you mentioning Modi's leadership as, are you equating Modi's leadership with his ideas in favor of business? Like, first to develop India, or maybe, make in India slogans, right? To promote more Chinese investment into India. Or are you equating Modi's leadership with more with state capacity, like capacity of Modi's government to structure like such institutions or institutionalize and implement such institutions in the on the ground level?
Well, the first point is the element of certainty that we all have about Modi. The second is the question mark that we probably all have about Modi. Because he definitely wants, the first factor is he has been going the whole world around telling everybody the same thing, which is come invest in India. Mm-hmm. The Make in India campaign, come invest in India. This has been a consistent message everywhere, in Asia and elsewhere, right? Now, what nobody is clear about is whether he will be able to, and at what pace, to the point, able to increase the state capacity. And that's really a problem. And this is not an easy problem. Again, I wouldn't want to give the impression that I'm being unduly critical of India. This is not things which are just done overnight. I mean, India is a big country. So whatever it does, it will take time. The question is, will it be able to do it sufficiently fast in order to keep up with the pace of development in the region and beyond, or if he can catch up on a number of other countries and so on, or will he still lag behind in a few years? And that's where the question is. I'm sure that thing will take place. How fast, how, and but yeah, the two aspects are definitely there when I speak of money.
Next question.
Yeah.
One more? Okay, sure. Go ahead.
No, Frank, there's so many things that are happening. I have so many questions to ask you. That's why I came all the way. But perhaps not in this room, because I don't want to monopolize my friend's time.
You have time. Yeah.
But one thing is, you see, let's go back to LKY. He says Asia will submerge if India doesn't emerge. That was his word. Asia will submerge.
Will submerge. Asia will submerge if India does not emerge.
Thank you.
Did you say that?
Yeah, he said that. It's Sunanda Datta's book.
Oh, Sunanda.
Wow. We have India, we have China, we have Japan. The three coming out. Who is stronger than who? Of course, nobody knows yet. We don't know. Although it looks like what you are saying, India slightly. But never happened in history, like three power in Asia in the same continent. What I want to know from you is, this from the political security side, that's not my area. On economic side, there is RCEP, Regional Comprehensive, where China is quite interested, and ASEAN led. And there is TPP, which is completely hijacked by US from those P4 countries. Now there is, because now RCEP doesn't have US, TPP doesn't have China. Frankly, it is incomplete, one without the other. One is the largest, other one is the second largest economy. Then now China is bringing back FTA AP in APEX meeting. Now it's going to go, the study is going to go ahead. And there, again, India is not there yet. But China is there, the US is there. In this complexity, whether is it in India's interest to join TPP? Or
India doesn't have the capacity to do it.
No. Wait, before you answer.
RCEP.
Before you answer, because, see, a lot of these things are determined whether I have capacity or not. I don't know whether that's the only factor. Vietnam, does it have capacity to join? Vietnam is more than willing to join. Malaysia, we don't know. There are 12 countries, 4 are from ASEAN. I don't think they are indicating their interest simply because they have the capacity. I don't know. Vietnam, definitely, I don't find the answer yet myself. Vis-a-vis what TPP demands, legally binding. Not like RCEP or ASEAN, where it is compliance without penalty.
Very flexible and everything.
Yeah, flexibility on that. No, not TPP. And the demand requested, the standard requested is, frankly, not up to the capacity of many Asian countries, except Singapore. So therefore, where India, see here, China is not there because by design. US has made it clear that the entrance is there, but very difficult. So we know where it is targeted.
What's your question?
My question is this: you said India is not, may not have capacity to join TPP. Could that be the only factor? Or there are more than that? First of all, is it in India's interest? Then question comes security, capacity and all that. Then same way with the AIIB. Now, Japan did not join, Korea did not join yet. Australia, I understand, is already indicating to join AIIB. Now, India is very much there. So in this web, how do you find the balancing of the various powers?
I think that's a fascinating question. That's a question that I've been trying to deal with in a paper that I'm writing. Because I think that this TPP story does introduce, in many ways, a disconnect between the US geoeconomic interest and geostrategic interest. On the one side, you have a US which says, well, India is a fundamental pillar of our rebalancing towards Asia. Fine. Now, at the same time, you do have the same US which says, well, the TPP is a fundamental pillar of our rebalancing policy towards Asia. And yes, you're right, India is not part of it. And I believe India doesn't have the capacity to be part of it. In any way, I don't know if it's India's interest to be part of it, But I know it's not also in India's interest, because if it cannot, it can be in India's interest. It doesn't have the capacity, it can be in its interest to be in a legally binding agreement, right? But at the same time, it will have consequences for India. So it's not in its interest to be outside of it either. So India is losing in the process, right? So in a way, you have a US policy which, and I'm not an economist, and I don't want to exaggerate the impact that not being in the TPP will have for India. I don't know, I can't measure it, and I'm not qualified for that, right? But my first reaction is that they lose no matter what in this process. How much they lose is unclear, right? And yes, I think there is a fundamental contradiction there. I can understand from a US perspective that it makes sense to have very high standard, legally binding FTA.
It's in their interest.
And set the terms of whatever economic order there will be in the region. Especially if China joins at a later stage, it will have to be according to US terms, or whatever terms will have to be agreed. I mean, so on. And I know it started here in Brunei, in Chile, and so on, in New Zealand. But yes, there is a contradiction there. I think I know it's a problem.
May I chip in this one? It's quite interesting to note that every 5 years, Indian government will announce its foreign trade policy. But up till now, the Modi government has not announced yet. It's very significant because the new government has not decided where to go. Because Modi has made in India its own policy. But how to achieve that? How to protect your own industry and yet open up? I think that one is still being debated. But on the question whether RCEP and TPP, I was quite interested to meet the former Chinese Lung Yinpao, the negotiator on the nuclear. So I asked him, we have RCEP and TPP, and then China one side and then America one side. How to reconcile? They say eventually ways can be found that RCEP and TPP will be open to each other. And therefore, Xi Jinping's idea, why not have an FTA? So eventually, the mechanics can work out. For me, I've been a negotiator in WTO. I do not believe that the Americans want to keep China permanently out of TPP. But they want to keep China out because they want to settle the rules first.
Yes.
Before China comes in.
No.
But once China is settled, then you can open to China.
Come on, our turn.
No, sorry. Xi Jinping has made it quite clear that even though I'm not able to join the TPP because of a state, a lot of pollution, but they're going to change themselves. So in a position that Americans have to accept China. I think to look at TPP as a containment policy, I think it's not correct. That's my view.
No. But I mean, I don't think I agree with you.
Yeah.
They don't see it as a containment policy, but they want to set the terms.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't change the problem for India, which was the question. It doesn't change the problem for India.
We're not very sure because we don't know what Modi government's policy is. Because I think it's stuck in between.
Now, the idea that the TPP and RCEP could open up to each other, fine. But I don't see how. What's the point of negotiating a TPP, which is a very high standard agreement, if it's to open it up to countries which will not be able to respect the terms of this? So theoretically, yes, probably.
RCEP is political.
Yeah.
It is less of that. But India may be allowed to join sectorial.
But I agree with Dr. Frederick. Because India is in a dilemma. You join, you have a cost to pay. You don't join, also there's a cost to pay. You see, the demanding conditions on on TPP are so huge and immense. India is not quite ready. I'm sure about that. The simple fact is the DSM, IS, what they call IS, when there is disagreement,
dispute settlement
mechanism.
Yes, sir.
And here, the TPP enables corporations to sue the government.
That's investment state.
I don't know the ISDS.
Yeah.
Now, you agree to that. I don't know. Can you take a stand with Goldman Sachs tomorrow, or Rhodes? And if you don't, then again there's a cost involved there. So both way, I seem like with the speaker.
I think we should
Let's
leave this aside. It's a very highly controversial technical to other issues. Like any leave to other participants want to raise any question? Yeah. I mean, fine. Any questions? Yeah. I may make the remark because 5 more minutes. I'm surprised to mention that neither Xi Jinping or Modi will change any dynamics of India-China relations. I'm not terribly convinced because yet too premature to say so. Look at Xi Jinping's style and Modi's style. Both are nationalists, both bent on making China and India strong, and both are quite firm on external issues. I think Modi is quite clear. They said, I want to modernize my defense, I want to fortify my borders, I want to make India strong, make India. The rest is great. Now, Xi Jinping has his own Asia-Pacific dream. Modi has Asian century dream. Can this be merged? You see any sign that both Modi and Xi can really work together to have a new change dynamics in Asia's security?
You start from a different perspective from the one that I took.
Yes.
I mean, you say both are nationalists, both are strong leaders. I mean, yes, both are strong. So it means that they are capable of carrying the support of their own population for whatever they decide at some point. And yes, this is an element that may go into in your direction. But the nationalism of Narendra Modi works also against itself, up to a point. The question that my approach was slightly different. My approach was India, the capacity of India has suddenly changed because of the election. It will take years to change, and at best, Modi will start from this margin of maneuver to a margin that will be larger because he will have increased his capacity. But he will not be able to fundamentally change the policy faster than he does than the capacity increase. That's what I mean by that. So those factors that you're mentioning, yes, may be mitigating factors, but I believe only at the margin. I mean, look at the way India look at the Arunachal issue. This is not a territory which is fundamental for any of the two countries in any ways, except for the national egos. I mean, and 62 is still a trauma for most Indians. It suffices to look at the reaction of the Indian press whenever there is an incident. It becomes immediately toxic, and so Modi is not a magician. Right? He has limitation as well. So, and I don't think that this would fundamentally change the dynamics between the two countries anyway. I mean, there are other dynamics emerging. What's going on in the Indo-Pacific is also important. And if you're Xi Jinping, I mean, why would you suddenly concede a leverage that you have had for so long and which works just so well? It costs virtually nothing to the Chinese. It allows them to put some pressure here and there. No one is stupid on either side to look for trouble. Not a single bullet has been shot since '75. Right? So, this is an easy and effective leverage which costs virtually nothing. Doesn't mean that nothing will happen, but the incentives are not really there.
Well, I think on this note, I would like to thank Dr. Ritwik Karang for a very interesting discussion. Of course, it gave us hope for better relation between India and China. I believe that they're still new to make a judgment on this Xi Jinping and Modi. They're still quite new, and then from what I observed, they think to be more optimistic than what you think. But in fact, on this note, I would like to present a token of appreciation from ISAS, and it says that the Silk Road rediscovered. I talk about opportunity between India and Chinese companies. This gives us hope for us in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. I think there's some coffee outside. You want to have some coffee outside. Thank you.